What if I told you the success of your Turo business could come down to choosing the right car? No, not the most expensive car, not the flashiest car, but something that maximizes profitability and cost. And no, it's not what you're thinking. The first car in your fleet is so crucial to your success with Turo, so make sure you stay till the very end so you understand the best type of car to purchase when starting a Turo business to make sure you start successfully. Hey guys, I'm George here, the founder of Car Rental Coach. I'm Pittsburgh's largest Turo host and have been in the ride-sharing space for over 5 years now. So I know exactly what type of cars are going to work and which ones aren't. And let me make this very clear too, they're different in every single market. So make sure you stay till the end. I want to go over everything I've learned over the last 5 years that's helped me choose the right vehicles. Because here's the thing guys, not all cars are going to perform equally on Turo. Some are going to sit idle while some get booked back to back, bringing you in earnings. And the only way to make money in this game is usage. You want your cars to be on the road constantly booked. You want to forget what they look like because they don't come back to your location at all. And this is what I'm going to make sure that you guys do. And if you stay to the end of the video, you're going to see exactly how to do it. All right, now let's look at what separates a great Turo vehicle versus an average one. Number one, demand. Like I said in many other videos, you want to make sure you get a car that's actually in demand. You want a car that's going to be booked that is very, very in demand in your area. So first thing you need to think about, do you have an area where you're going to be dealing more with locals, or do you live in an area where you're going to be dealing more with travelers and airport guests? That can make a big difference with the type of vehicles that you decide to add to your fleet. So think about the demand in your area. Are you going to be dealing with families that are traveling? Are you going to be dealing with business professionals? Are you going to be dealing with college students? Are you going to be dealing with local people in the area that need the car just to get to work? Do you live in a more affluent area, say like Miami? Or do you live in more of like an average or lower cost of living like I do in the Pittsburgh area? These all play a crucial factor when picking out the right Turo car. And that's why not every market performs the same, and there's different cars based on that. So you're gonna wanna make sure you do your market research and look at your specific area. And if you work with us at carrentalcoach.com, you can fill out our quick 60-second survey. What we actually do as part of our program, we help you with all the market analysis to make sure you choose the right car. But there's a few tips I can give you on how to do it. So we have some special softwares that we use that can actually scrape Turo. But one way to do it, take a look at your area, put the dates out a few months in the future as if you're a guest wanting to book a car on Turo. So let's say it's December right now. Put it for somewhere in like March. Make sure you're not doing it on holidays when you put these dates in because that can affect the cars that are shown available in your area. And what you're going to want to do, put it for like a 3-day booking. Take a look at what cars are popping up. Look at the reviews. The more reviews a car has on it, that means the more trips that vehicle's had specifically. And then I also like to filter the results by people that are all-star hosts, like me. Well, I'm actually a power host, which is a step above an all-star host. But basically, an all-star host shows that these people are more serious. They're doing more revenue. They have a more successful business model on Turo. So those are the people you want to mimic because for them to get to the point where they become an all-star host, they have to be successful with what they're doing. So if they're successful with it, you have to assume that they're making money. So I usually like to copy the top hosts in the market. So look at who the #1 people are. Look at what kind of cars they have in their fleet. And that can give you a pretty good idea on what the demand is in your area. And also just use common sense, like I said before. Think about the avatar of your area. So with my area in Pittsburgh, I have a hybrid between airport guests and locals. So what I usually do is stick with more economy cars, then I have a few nicer ones too. But really economy, you can never go wrong, especially in a market like Pittsburgh. But we're about 30 minutes from the airport, so we do get airport guests that will Uber to us. And we do have a lot of locals that use us as well. So we have repeat customers, which I love. Some people complain about locals, saying they beat the car up more. And I can sometimes see the airport guests leaving the car in better condition, but overall I have a very good experience with the locals. And what I like about the locals the most, it's reoccurring revenue. So these people are going to keep coming back, they tell friends. And I have some people, booking the car that are locals for 6 months at a time. And those are nice checks because the less that I have to look at the car, have it detailed by employees, I still have it serviced obviously, and you can always have them actually go out, do the oil changes, and then just make payment over the phone to help automate the entire process. But I love having that recurring revenue from locals, and I love that locals book these cars long term. Airport guests, they might only book the car for a week at the most or a few days just to come travel into town or for business. Locals, their car might be broken down, or now that Turo is going to be partnering with Uber, over the next couple months, they're going to start pushing out the Turo cars to Uber drivers. So I really hope to take advantage of that in my market and become one of the #1 suppliers of vehicles to Uber drivers in the area to make sure my cars are always rented and on the road. The second thing when looking at a Turo car to realize if it's going to be an average performer or a top performer, and we all want top performers, right, is the profitability. And that is the #1 thing when looking at any car or investment or business in general. If it doesn't make profit, it doesn't make sense. A lot of people, they love to chase revenue, but all that really matters is at the end of the day, the profit you make. So this means when you're sourcing these cars, you don't want to get into bad car loans. I've dealt with so many clients at carrentalcoach.com, and I've helped them get out of their bad car loans and help them find more creative ways to finance their purchases and help them save thousands of dollars. But nothing is worse than when I see a host starting out with the worst car payments you could imagine, and I feel bad because they realize they're working and they're not making any money. I've talked to some students, they're in car payments for $900 a month on certain vehicles. Well, $900 a month, let's say the average Turo car can bring you in around $800 to say $1,400. Then you have costs like insurance, just basic maintenance. Even if nothing major goes wrong with the car, you still have to get tires every so often. You have to get oil changes. And when they're paying that $900 a month payment on these vehicles, there's really not much room to profit, let alone hire an employee. So basically, they're lucky if they can just build equity in the car by paying off the loan. But then you have to remember there's depreciation at the end of the day. So really make sure when you buy your first car, you keep your overhead low. Do not get into an expensive car loan, I beg you. That is the worst thing you can do. There are other ways to finance these cars, from interest-free credit cards to working with some of our partners at carrentalcoach.com, and even just saving up your own cash and getting a cheaper economy car. I highly recommend that over getting into an expensive payment. So let me just give you an example from one of the clients I worked with. I won't say his name. He was able to sell this car though, and now he's doing extremely well on Turo. But he bought a Cadillac Escalade. It was a 2023. And his payment was around $1,000 a month on this thing. It was actually bringing in $1,600 a month, so a little bit more than your average Turo car. But then after expenses, he looked at everything, realized he was not making that much money. Then I had another client who had a Nissan Versa, which was a 2016. That car was only bringing in $900 a month, but still very good for the year, make, and model. And they were making more profit than my other client who had the Cadillac Escalade, even though he was doing more revenue. So remember, don't just chase revenue in this business. It doesn't matter if you have a luxury car, say it's even bringing in $2,000 a month, versus somebody that has the economy car that might be bringing half of that. But a lot of times the person with the economy car is actually making more profit. And at the end of the day, profit is #1 and what matters the most in this business. It's going to be how you pay yourself, how you grow this fleet. Revenue looks cool on paper until you realize that these people actually aren't making that much money. And I fell victim to this myself. When I first started, I started the business with a few economy cars. They did extremely well. I was very profitable. So I took that profit and I bought a BMW X5. I know when I say luxury, we're not talking Ferraris, Lamborghinis, stuff like here. To me, I think luxury, like BMWs, Mercedes. But anyways, I bought the BMW X5. I bought it because one, I thought, it'd be cool to have some nicer cars in the fleet. I like BMWs. If I could pay it off, I was thinking, well, I'd like to drive this myself. And it was a vanity thing a little bit. I thought, it's cool. And I wanted to try out some luxury cars in the area, see if they perform better. Well, the car did a little bit better, but still only bringing in around $1,300 versus the economy cars that were bringing in like $900 to $1,000. So not much more. And then we ended up having an oil leak where they had to replace the oil pan at the bottom, and it was thousands of dollars to have this fixed, eating away at all of my profits. And BMWs are a lot more expensive to maintain, so I realized that this car was a money pit. I ended up being lucky and it got totaled and I got my money out of it. But if I would have stayed in that car, I think it would have just been an expensive headache where I would have been working for free to think I was doing good because of the revenue, but then at the end of the day, the cost did not make sense. So how you buy these cars is so important. If you can, cash is always king, but if you can think of creative ways to use leverage too, maybe you have a property that's paid off, you can take out a loan. There's SBA loans that you could do through the government. There's interest-free credit cards. And like I said too, when you work with us at carrentalcoach.com, we have a lot of people that we can refer you to too that specialize in getting cheap auto loans. But guys, just don't get into an expensive car payment. Don't get in over your head, and make sure that you keep the business very lean to start to make sure you have the highest margins, because I want to see you make a return on this and not be another Turo host that says, you know what, this isn't for me. They give up, and at the end of the day, they have no money, a headache, and they end up losing thousands of dollars plus all of the time they invested in this. You don't want to be that person. The third most important thing about an average Turo car versus an exceptional one is reliability. So reliability comes down to your profitability too, right? Because if this car isn't reliable, you're always throwing money at it, well, at the end of the day, you're still not going to make much more money. So when you buy a car, make sure you do your research on the year, make, and model for reliability factors, because every year and every model is not created equally. I'll give you guys an example. I bought a 2016 Chevy Cruze. This thing ended up being a money pit that I put thousands of dollars in to keep fixing, and just kept on having issues, mostly overheating and a lot of strange things that a lot of mechanics couldn't even diagnose. So I hated that car for a while, thought, maybe I'll never buy another Chevy Cruze. But I looked up that model. It turns out it had super poor reliability, the specific one I had. So that's something I could have avoided if I would have looked it up first. Then I bought a 2017 Chevy Cruze. That was one of the top performers in my entire fleet last year. That car brought in over $12,000, and all I had to do was some oil changes and basic maintenance for it. So again, every year, make, and model is not created equal. And you know, everybody has their different opinions. Just look it up online, search the year, make, and model, and then reliability, and then you'll find a lot of information. And a lot of car brands have stepped it up. Like for example, Hyundai and Kia. I have a lot of those in my fleet, but earlier models of those cars, a lot of people would say were junk, but I think Hyundai and Kia have really stepped it up. And I know when it comes to reliability, Toyota and Honda are always at the top of the list with people thinking about reliability. But I actually prefer Hyundai and Kia because I get them significantly cheaper when we source our vehicles from auction and other ways, where I'm paying maybe 40 to 50% less than a Toyota or a Honda with a pretty similar reliability. So I think a lot of these other car brands have really stepped it up, but always do your research, because even when you're buying economy cars like I do, problems can happen if you buy something a little bit too old. But check the history too, check the Carfax on it, see how many owners there have been, make sure that the car has a record of being maintained, and those can avoid you, like those small things you do right there can avoid thousands of dollars being wasted on a car that's not reliable. Because at the end of the day, the reliability costs you for two different reasons. One, the actual cost to get the car fixed, which can be pretty expensive just alone. And then number two, opportunity costs. The cost if that car would have been maintained and working well and been on the road. So really, you're losing the money that you have to use to fix the car, and you're losing the money for the daily rate the car goes for. So you don't want to do that. Always make sure you check out reliability factors and make sure you're buying off a trusted source. I can't stress that enough either. If you're sourcing a car off Facebook Marketplace or something like that, which has its pros and cons, I've done it before and done very well, make sure you go out, and if you don't know much about cars, bring a buddy or take it to your local mechanic, have it looked at, safety checked. You don't want to be on the end of buying a car that doesn't make any sense. We had one client for Car Rental Coach. We looked up the VIN on his vehicle, and what actually happened, somebody changed the odometer to make him think the car was lower miles. So on his car, it showed it had 80,000 miles on his vehicle when he showed me pictures on the odometer. We ran the Carfax on it. It showed that it was a car used for a taxi. So this was a Toyota Corolla. They used it for a taxi cab. It had 220,000 miles according to Carfax, which Carfax was accurate. So he bought this off Facebook Marketplace. The guy did something extremely illegal where he changed out the odometer in the car, which I didn't even know you could do this on some of the newer ones. So this guy had some tricks up his sleeves. But I showed our client this because we tried to list the car on Turo and it got kicked back, and it didn't make any sense because cars have to be under 130,000 miles to be put on Turo. Well, it turns out this guy scammed him. So always make sure you check out the Carfax on the car. That is so important. And go out to go see the car, take it for a test drive. And if you buy it through like a used car dealership, something like that, a lot of times they offer warranties, and you can also go out and get warranties through third-party companies, so you don't always have to buy them directly through the dealership if you're able to find a better one. Or if you work with us at Car Rental Coach, we'll actually help you source the vehicles through our connections and pass on the savings that we get from going to auctions. So that's another benefit of working with us. But whatever you do, just make sure you do your due diligence, make sure you do research on the year, make, and model, investigate the person you're buying the car off of, and all of that stuff will help you be successful in this business. All right, before I tell you my top picks for cars, I want to tell you the most common mistakes I see with people starting out in this business and what they do wrong with their first car. First thing I notice that people do wrong, they go into luxury right when they start without even testing out their market. It always happens because, the guy or girl, whoever starts it, they say, oh, I really like BMWs, I really like Mercedes, I want to drive one. Maybe I can get a car and I can make my payments on it by renting it out part-time and I can own the car. Makes sense to a certain point. And if that's your goal with the business, maybe just trying to pay off your dream car, that's definitely possible. But for me, I wouldn't want a bunch of strangers jumping into like the car that I want to drive myself. I'd rather have the business be profitable that I'm running than use the money I make to then buy a car that I'd like instead of renting out a car part-time so I can maybe own it in the future. But anyways, they do that and they realize that they're not making much more money there's really no profit after their car payment. People are beating up the luxury car. And again, it's like they didn't buy a car based on what their market's telling them that does good. Their market might say, oh, Mitsubishi Mirages or Honda Civics are the best car, most profitable in your area. But they say, well, I like Mercedes-Benz. So they buy that and it doesn't rent as well as it should because they didn't make the purchase based on business sense. They made it off of their personal gain. So make sure that you do your market research, look at your area. Do not make this a personal decision. This is a business. Buy your car like it is a business because it is a business. Don't buy a car just because you like the car. That doesn't make any sense. That's one of the biggest mistakes that we see. Then number two, which I kind of got into with the other point, is just understanding your market. Some people, they just buy an economy car just because they like it. They just say, oh, it's a cheap car. Well, you should have looked it up a little bit more because even though it's a cheap car, like let's say you buy a cheap Nissan, you didn't do research, a cheap Hyundai would have performed better. So not all economy cars are created equal. Make sure you're doing your market research. That matters a lot. Take your time. Don't just jump into it. Do your research and figure out what car makes the most sense. And don't go base your numbers off of what other Turo hosts are saying, unless it's me, of course. No, I'm kidding. But really make sure that they're not talking about their market in particular. When I recommend cars to clients, I don't say, oh, well, in Pittsburgh, this car does really well. Well, no, I base my knowledge off the cars and which ones I know perform well and which ones are profitable, but then I look at their specific market and I take that knowledge I have and figure out which one would work over there. Because this is a very segmented thing when it comes to Turo. Every market is completely different, so don't take advice just from people in the Facebook groups, stuff like that, unless they're in your area. Then you can take them a little bit more seriously. Or if they did research on your market for you, just make sure that they're looking at the numbers in your specific area. And the third biggest mistake I see people in this business, which puts them out of business completely, is underestimating costs. So when you go into this thing, you really have to understand all of your costs to the T. You have to understand what you're going to be paying for insurance, what you're going to be paying for the car's maintenance, what kind of car payments you have. Do you have an employee or a part-time helper that's going to help detail the cars and help guests and clean them? Do you have a place you're going to be storing these cars at? Do you understand the fees that Turo takes, which there's a lot of different structures with that as well. So when you go into this, make sure you understand all of the costs. And like I said before, the number one cost you really want to beat down is that monthly payment. You do not want to get into this business with an $800 or $900 a month payment because you are not going to make any money off that. I can promise you, I've seen it too many times. So make sure you do not underestimate your costs when buying these cars. All right, drum roll please. It's not that serious, but it is because it's going to make you money. So the best car you can start with, I have a few thoughts on that. So first of all, I think the best car you can start with is a car you currently have. So if you have an extra car that's sitting there, or have a friend or family member with an extra car, or just want to try out your own personal car because you don't have to drive it every single day, use a car that you already have access to. Why is that? Well, Turo is not for everybody. Renting cars is not for everybody. I want to make sure you like it first before you start getting invested in the business. Not everybody is meant to be a business owner, and that's okay. The world is filled with a lot of unique people, but you want to make sure this is something you actually like, and the best car to start with is one that you already have access to. So you don't have to invest money, you don't have to do all of the work to then realize, well, you know what, this isn't for me. So if you have a car available, that is the best way to actually start this business. And I understand a lot of people don't have a car available, which that's not a problem at all either, because you want to make sure you buy the right car to start. So the things I look at to make sure I'm buying a winning car: affordability. I recommend mostly economy cars, except for a few different markets I've seen. But really, I'd like you to keep your first car purchase under $13,000. If you can keep it under $13,000, there's a lot of room for you to make some mistakes and a lot of room for you to make some big profits off of it. And if you get a car at that price too, your monthly payment shouldn't be that bad unless you have pretty poor credit. But at that price range, it's very, very unlikely you won't be able to be profitable on Turo. So number one thing I look at, keep the car under $13,000, especially when you're starting out, so you have room to make some mistakes. So reliability, like I said before, make sure you look at the year, make, and model of the car. Going to be very important. Look at the reliability rating, because not all years, makes, and models are equal at all. A 2013 and a 2014 car, the same make and model, could be completely different in reliability. So high demand, like I said, look at your market, see what's already performing. You want a car that's going to be constantly on the road and moving. And then fuel efficiency. So this is one that I think is going to be more and more important as time goes on, now that Turo has this partnership with Uber. People that are driving Uber and renting these cars, they care about their gas. And a lot of Americans care about their gas, but especially people doing this kind of gig work, like doing delivery work, because that's coming out of their bottom line when it comes to doing their job. So if you can find a car that's better on gas versus another one that's a little bit worse on gas, they're around the same price range, a lot of times I'd go with the one that's better on gas. That's going to be a huge perk, and I think that's going to continue to be a trend here when it comes to Turo. All right, are you still not convinced? Here's some more things to think about. According to Turo, compact sedans like the Toyota Corolla and Honda Civic are consistently among the most booked cars on the platform. They also have some of the highest ROI, with rental rates averaging $40 to $60 per day depending on your location. And reliability studies consistently rank some of these sedans at the top, meaning fewer headaches for you and better reviews from your renters. I definitely recommend starting with an economy sedan or something like that, and then reinvest your profits, maybe buy another one, a couple more that are working. Then you can start to diversify, get some different types of cars in your fleet, like some SUVs and things like that. I started with very similar cars till I had around 3, and then I started to experiment with SUVs and some different types of vehicles. And at that point, I was already very profitable, and those cars luckily did extremely well too. And I would love to hear what kind of cars you guys are buying for your Turo business, or the cars you're thinking about buying. So please put them down below in the comments, and I'll make sure to respond. Remember, your Turo journey or car rental business journey starts with just one car, and then it turns into a fleet. So I'll see you guys in the next video.